Well, it gives me a very great pleasure this afternoon to move on to the next part of our afternoon, which is the talk by Father Marcus Walker from Great Bartholomew's, London. Marcus was, or is, the chair of Save the Parish and was one of the co-founders, I understand. I think anybody in the Church of England who is aware of what's going on in the world at the moment, in the church world, will be aware that the parish is under threat and that this is likely to have implications for us on the clergy and of course for others, whether the parish should be a fundamental basis of pastoral ministry. What impact is that going to have on communities and villages and those who are worshippers within the Church of England? So this is extremely important to us and to us as clergy, and therefore it's a great pleasure to welcome Marcus today, who will talk about some of the issues that the Church of England is facing today.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your welcome and for inviting me here today to speak to you. Save the Parish was founded almost 2 years ago after, I think it was really in the wake of the statement by a Canon McGinley about the creation of 10,000 new lay-led churches, where he said that this would be a new way of being the church, unencumbered by such costly elements as the stipend, the building, and a long, costly theological education. And I suppose in reaction to that, Save the Parish proudly flies the flag for stipends, buildings, and long, costly theological education. Although what's happened since then has really, well, it broadened our focus and narrowed our focus almost at the same time. One of the things that I'm acutely glad of is that people have come to support us who are far cleverer than I am and far better with numbers than I am. We've set up a financial scrutiny committee made up of professional accountants, former chief auditor of the European Commission, and financiers who've actually done a deep dive into the accounts of all 42 dioceses, the church commissioners, the Archbishop's Council, and all of the endowment funds that in slightly ambiguous ways float around each of those organisations. We'll be coming on to that in a moment with this little handout that I've given to those who are here, and if you're watching this later, I promise that I'll send the PDF of this so you can look at it at home. But the question of what's happening to the parish has actually got far more acute in the 2 years since we were founded. 2 dioceses have made the decision effectively to abolish the parish system, Leicester and Truro, following a structure that they're calling the Minster Community Model, where dozens of parishes are being merged together under one oversight minister, who in Leicester did not even have to be ordained, until there was a little rebellion on the diocesan synod, which at least that was changed. One oversight minister, and with pastoral care being doled out like a sort of Blairite GP's model, surgery. It's now really being set up in Leicester. The first minister community was established the other day. 25 parishes with 35 churches, 1 stipendary priest, 2 pioneer ministers. Across the whole of Leicester, they are reducing the number of clergy from 102 to 80. All of this is being done ostensibly in the name of a £1.2 million deficit in 2020, which I would say is no year that you necessarily pick as the year to make sharp decisions. Truro is doing much the same, and there's a full-scale revolt going on down there from a number of their who really do not want to see the reduction. I mean, an entire deanery has been turned into one parish with only one stipendary priest to cover it. We hear all the time, when engaging with diocese and the national church, Mrs. Thatcher's favourite phrase, "there is no alternative," which, if you've ever read Bibles, that was what she used to scrawl as in memos when people were objecting to her policies. There is no alternative. Well, I hope by the end of this you know that there is an alternative, and that what is being done by choice, not by force majeure. There are generally three reasons given, at least people have at the back of their mind, even if they're never explicitly given, as to why these minister communities are being formed in these two dioceses, but frankly, across the whole of the church, you'll see more and more and more parishes being bunched together, with fewer and fewer and fewer clergy ministering in those parishes. The three reasons generally given are: one, we don't have the priests; two, we don't have the money; and three, such money as we do have should be given to projects that are going to be targeted on growth, generally of a particular type. Well, I'd like to knock down each of those three, if I may. The first thing is the simplest, that there are not enough priests. For the last 5 years, we have been ordaining more priests than are retiring every single year. This is from the Church of England's own figures. At least the last 5 years, we've been ordaining more priests than are retiring, and this is now, according to their own actuarial estimates, what they're expecting to happen into the foreseeable future. There are, however, 980 priests not working in parochial or indeed in any form of priestly ministry, but in non-priestly HQ jobs, either at diocesan HQs or the national church institutions. That's almost 15% of ordained clergy are not actually ministering in parishes. Part of that is terms and conditions, which are often considerably better and more secure in diocesan HQs. Part of that is workload. Part of that is the proliferation of posts that don't need to exist. I'd like to ask you to take a look at the document that I've given you, and that you will have if you're watching from home, hopefully. What this is courtesy of those people who can do numbers, a complete examination of the entire financial ecosystem of the Church of England. This was the first time that this has been done. When we brought our first trial of this to General Synod at York last year, financial people from Church House said, "Well, where did you get all these figures? I mean, don't know that we trust them." And we said, "Well, we got them from all published accounts. Every diocese is a charity." "No. Well, we've never done this," they said. And so they went away and did their own version and called us in. It happened to be the week between the Queen's death and her funeral. We went in, and we were more or less in the same ballpark. We were slightly quibbling as to what should be counted to what. So they liked to consider that all fees for weddings and funerals should be counted as diocesan funds, and we that came down to the parishes, and we tended to see them as parochial funds that go up to the diocese, but we weren't quibbling as to what the numbers were. So this is both being accomplished by people whose job this is on a day-to-day basis, and actually agreed by Church House, so we're not actually quibbling about the figures. So, let's take a look at what this says. The first thing is that almost £1 billion is produced at a parochial level. £900,000 a year is brought into the church ecosystem by bake sales, the collection plate, fundraising concerts, wedding fees, funeral fees, and all the rest. That is the big bundle, that is the largest single production of money in the entire...
So that's 900 million.
900 million, that's right. So almost £1 billion of the one at the very bottom. Of that, £600 million stays within the parish funding, the operations of the parish funding, keeping the roof on funding, and administrative funding, the photocopy and repair person when they come out, all the rest of the things that happen at the parochial level. £314 million go up in parish share, parish fees, and all the rest. That's what comes up bubbling from the bottom. Then we've got at the top the £10.2 billion investment fund of the Church Commissioners. This is the 33rd largest investment fund in the world. From that, £226 million get put by the Church Commissioners, taking into account their costs, and then into the rest of the Church of England's ecosystem, to cathedrals, the archbishops and bishops. That's gone up enormously in the last 20 years, one might note, and to the Archbishop's Council, who then send that down to the diocese. Money on the side, land, buildings, investments, and diocesan stipend funds, that's investments held by dioceses. Most of that comes from glebe land, appropriated from parishes in 1976, with endowments and glebes measure that used to be administered at a parochial level and now administered at a diocesan level. That brings in between it £131 million from assets of around £6 billion. The total amount of assets, the total amount of money that comes from assets, from endowments, that goes into the sea of the economy and went into 2021 was £360 million. And you add up the different land buildings investments, the diocesan stipends fund, and the Church Commissioners at the top. So how much of that money actually gets to parishes? £381 million is spent on parishes, stipends and pensions. That's offset by £314 million from the parish share and other associated costs. So out of £360 million, only £67 million finds its way to the parishes. That is 19% of the income from the assets of the Church of England, every single penny of which was given for funding parochial ministry. That's what the Church Commissioners were set up for. Queen Anne's bounty was paid for. The endowments and glebes that were taken in 1976 were all to be used for stipendary clergy or for supporting the parochial ministry. And of the money that comes from all of that, only 19% every year gets used for that purpose. So that is a huge reality to pay attention to. As the Church decides what it's spending its money on, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. It has made a conscious decision that 81% of that will go on everything other than parochial ministry. Where does this money go? Well, a large amount of that goes to diocesan HQs. You can see that great big yellow bit in the middle. What is your estimate of the percentage of staff at HQ as opposed to the front bar? What do you think it should be? Of any organisation, of any charity?
10%.
10%. That's roughly what the charity commission says. 10 to 12%. Well, Carlisle, it's 55% parish, 45% HQ. Sheffield, 64% parish, 36% HQ. Birmingham, 65% parish, 35% HQ. Leicester, 67%, 33% HQ.
What's the percentage for, say, church house that we done?
That's what I mean. So this is the payment, but this is staff costs.
Yes.
What they're paying for this. We've got every single on our website, every single diocese is broken down.
So church house comes within that?
Church house, do you mean nationally?
In general, each diocese?
Each diocese, yes. This is church house, and anything else that's centrally run.
Overstaffed?
Figure for Bath and Wales.
We do on the website, I don't have it in my book. I'm afraid every single diocese is out there with their percentages. There are good dioceses. London, 86% clergy, 14% laity. Chester, well not laity, sorry, 14% HQ. Chester, 85%, 15%. The dioceses are spending 20% of all the money that comes into them on their HQ. You know, when all of the money that comes from 20% on their HQ. We're calling on them to reduce that figure by only a third. To see what we could, that would open up 10 to 15 million pounds if they were to do that. Are the dioceses looking after their investments right? The £5.8 billion of investments that the dioceses have? Well, no. In 2013, in response to a request from the Charity Commission, Parliament approved the concept of total return of accounting, which was in turn approved by Synod for use by dioceses. Under these rules, charities, including dioceses, are allowed to spend some of their investment in capital subject to strict actuarial rules. By 2021, only 10 dioceses have done this. These 10 now contribute double the amount to their stipends fund each year than all the remaining 30 dioceses put together. If all 40 dioceses managed their investment accounts only as well as the average of those using total return accounting, there would be an extra £25 million to be spent on the diocesan stipendary funds. Church commissioners. The £100 million that's coming down from the Archbishop's Council in this figure was in 2021 divided 50 million into the Lower Income Communities Fund and 50 million into the Strategic Development Fund. The Lower Income Communities Fund, in theory this is a good thing. Money goes to dioceses according to some slightly curious way of assessing how much deprivation there is offset by how much wealth there is, and it just goes into the diocesan pot. Some dioceses are really good. York matches that funding to the lowest parishes, and they know that they've got X amount given to them for funding their ministry. Other dioceses, particularly Truro, I think Truro, but certainly other dioceses, it just goes straight into the diocesan pot and it's not matched whatsoever, it's just used for the general pot. That's a link. £50 million for the Strategic Development Fund. The Strategic Development Fund has been running for 6 years, or was the last year 6 years, I suppose it's now 7 years. It has earmarked £176 million for projects designed to further growth. This could not be spent in any rural parish, explicitly. It could only be spent on something new. It could be spent encouraging or resourcing something that already existed, and it shouldn't be spent on styles of worship that are already used in the parish, although one might note rather notable exceptions to that if those styles of worship are already seen to be new. So Christopher Choate, former head of the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, was tasked by Synod with fully auditing this. And he brought out an absolutely damning report last year. £176 million was supposed to be spent in exchange, well not in exchange, with an expectation of bringing in 69,000 new members of congregations. By the time that shuffled out, the final figure was 12,500 new witnessed disciples, which was a slightly weasel way of not having to use communicant or regular attender in order to count the numbers. Of that, Choate believed half came from other churches. It comes out at approximately £13,000 a new witness disciple. And I promise you, £13,000, I get a much better return, even if it's a bribery. But that's a vast waste of money. But I'm afraid, following Einstein's definition of insanity, of believing that if you do something again, you'll have a different result, the Church of England decided to double down on this. They're now giving £100 million a year to this, although it's being rebranded SMMI, and I can't quite remember what the acronym stands for. £100 million a year will be spent on new projects, exciting and shiny new. I note that the Lower Income Communities Fund has not increased by a penny, notwithstanding inflation. So, what does this mean? What is it that we can actually say works? We know, we've seen from the Church report, that blowing this vast money on these new projects doesn't work. But the Church of England has also invested a lot of money in reports assessing what does work, what does lead to growth. 3 separate reports have looked into it and have come out with the entirely unsurprising assessment that the more parishes you assign to a priest, the more likely it is that those parishes will shrink in size. And the fewer parishes that are assigned to a priest, the more likely they are to grow. The more likely it is that people know their parson, the more likely they are to come to church. The less likely people are to know their parson, the less likely they are to feel a personal connection and to come to church. There was even more stunning revelation that came out in a report came out 2 months ago about the impact of COVID, which is if you reduce provision, people are less likely to come to church. I'd like to know how you get on the team studying this, because there is a vast amount of money to be made in saying blindingly obvious. But if the more parishes you merge together with the fewer priests and the fewer services you hold, you are driving decline. This is a choice. And there is the money to make sure you don't have to do that. And there are the priests to make sure you don't have to do that. But at the moment, the decision has been taken to spend the vast resources that the church has across the investments, across diocese and the diocese and the church commissions. We're talking about approximately £16 billion worth of investments. We're making the decision not to spend it on parishes and on the front line. And the consequence of that will be the death of the parochial system. And it will be the death of people knowing it will be the death of churches up and down the country, because as fewer people come to the justification for keeping those churches open disappears, and they will become supermarkets and swimming pools and private houses. And we will see these havens of communities, these places that bear in their stones the stories of their communities over centuries, privatised, taken out of the community. And we will see communities denied access to their churches, access to their priests, access to their history, access to their faith. And this is, at the moment, a decision the Church of England, accidentally or intentionally, is making. And there isn't long to turn that ship around and to get us back to doing the basics of a church in this country. So, there is an alternative. Shrink the diocese. Get the diocesan funds working properly. Get the church commissioners back to the day job of funding parochial ministry. It actually is not that hard if we were to decide to do it. And so I'm hoping, with the little amount of pressure that Save the Parish is doing, it's gently prodding that enormous supertanker to turn around and to refocus itself on its true vocation. Thank you very much for inviting me here to speak today.